My goal with the volume was to give readers an impression, not just of the events, and not just of the documents, but also of the kind of life that people lived in America from earliest colonial times up until the beginning of the Civil War. So I hope they get some kind of insight into America itself. I think really anyone concerned to know more about our country would benefit from reading it. One of the things that I've been most pleased at is how often the book has been used in classes with fairly young people. Even quite young children can get a lot out of it, and one hopes later on dip back into the volume and learn more as they get older. It is important for people, whether they're a college professor or a middle school student, to have a bit of context. And that's really all that I try to give with the headnotes. They tend to be quite brief, a paragraph or so. And again, the purpose is just to give a little bit of groundwork so that it's not coming straight out of the blue for the reader. When putting together a volume like this, you have to look at what is accepted as important by other people. So one would find in here documents that you would really simply expect to find, that the book would be incomplete without. One couldn't very well put together a book of primary sources without including the Declaration of Independence or the Mayflower Compact. These are foundational documents. So some of them were simply very easy to choose. In addition to that, though, I wanted to look for some documents that did a lot to sum up a way of life or issues that were really important to people at the time. I made a concerted effort to include essential documents relating to the growth and development of ordered liberty and constitutional government in the United States. So there are many documents of that particular type, from the Magna Carta from 1215 through arguments over the secession of the southern states prior to the Civil War, and obviously including the Constitution, and arguments on both sides of the ratification debates. And in addition to these, I've included certain speeches that I thought were particularly important, but also shorter pieces that I think throw light on the way that people lived and the issues that they thought were important at the time. In one sense, the time frame is from the beginning of American settlement to the opening of the Civil War. It focuses upon the foundation of America as a colonial area, but also of America as an independent nation, up through the beginnings of the Civil War, but attempts really to help the reader see that in its full context. Advanced students need these sources to get a better understanding of how to interpret public documents, and also of how things like the Constitution actually help structure public life. Beyond that, though, I think that everyone should read primary source documents. Anyone who wants to know more about their own history can learn far more by spending some time with George Washington or John Adams than simply with someone else's interpretation of these folks. To actually spend some time with the Puritans as they set down what they think is most important, what the law should and should not regulate. You can learn a lot more by looking at what they had to say for themselves than by reading someone else's opinion about that. some of these documents are in danger of being lost to history. So, for example, I include some documents against the American War for Independence. There was a Jonathan Bousher, an Anglican minister, who argued that the Americans should learn to be obedient. They should be passively obedient to their rulers. This is an argument which, I'm not necessarily saying people should buy into and take as their own. That's up to them. They don't need to listen to me. But I think it's important to understand what it was that those who were on the side of revolution in America were arguing against, and the viewpoint that they had to contend with. I think there are a number of ways in which primary sources can help a classroom experience be better, more informative, and more interesting for the students. There's a great deal of fear on the part of some teachers that when they assign primary source documents, the students will roll their eyes at the old style language and not want to read. But I've very rarely found that, and certainly never past the first couple of paragraphs. Because when you actually, especially if you take the time to read some of the documents out loud and they can hear how it sounds, most students become absolutely fascinated by the different intonations and the different language. So I don't think there's that much to overcome. And what it adds is really remarkable. It helps students engage with the actual persons, personalities, concerns, and fears of the people that you're studying. And they learn a great deal about the assumptions that people had about what kind of life they were leading and what kind of life they wanted to lead.